Dear friend who lives in the world next to mine, I am typing this letter while my room waits for our eyes to hold it steady. I know you prefer plain words, so I will speak simply, and I will trust your patience and your care. I am safe for now because the night watch is awake across my street, and their little red lamps confirm the edges of the pavement. When the lamps blink, the curb softens, and we call the city to look again. It is a small ritual, but it keeps the corner shop from slipping into a guess. I want to tell you how a day works here, and why I am writing to you, and why your attention matters more than a stamp. You and I never named each other, and that has always felt right for letters like ours. We live as neighbors across a narrow seam, and I can feel the outline of your world when you read my words. Your reading is a kind of light for my voice, and my typing is a small light for my room. I speak about light a lot, though none of this is about brightness, and all of it is about care. We use the word observe in the way you use the word hold, because to look is to carry the weight of a thing so it does not drift. I grew up in a family of lookouts, and we learned to carry the weight of bridges and clinics and kitchens. On my first school trip, we toured an observation tower that keeps the East Canal in place. The guide asked us to stand still and count to 20 while a thin mist formed over the water. When we reached 20, a hush went through the group as the banks firmed up again. The city funds the tower by selling render bonds that promise a certain number of verified glances per hour. You can laugh at the phrase verified glances, but this is our bread and our rails and our blood. When a hospital has a shortfall, people volunteer to keep the wards crisp while nurses sleep. We hold the halls by reading stories, by playing cards, by telling jokes to IV poles that wobble when no one sees them. A hospital without watchers will keep the pain and lose the doors, and that is a nightmare we do not permit. You ask what happens to places that no one holds, and I will answer as gently as I can. They do not vanish in the way a candle goes out, and they drift in the way a promise goes vague. You can still walk into a drift, but you will not know which room you entered until you pick a direction and insist. That insistence is a choice, and a choice here becomes a structure, and a shared choice becomes a street. We try not to force the world with greedy eyes, because overdoing it makes seams where frames collide. When too many watchers push their own angles, the same corridor can split into two honest versions that do not agree. We call that a fracture, and we fix it by asking people to soften their grip and match their timing. The best citizens are good at looking and good at letting go, and the hardest part of our politics lives there. You may wonder how we handle truth in court, and I wish our answer were cleaner than it is. The law collects observation braids, which are woven strings of live views from people and lenses and public feeds. A claim that cannot anchor to a braid is called a free rumor, and a free rumor is not a crime and not a defense. My neighbor once tried to argue that her garden fence did not exist during a tax inspection. The city clerk showed her a clean braid from the day before, and the fence stayed for another year. We laughed together after the clerk left, and then we brought tea to the fence and looked at it until the jokes wore off. I like to tell you about small things because they carry the shape of the large things here. The large things are bridges and trains and parcels of farmland that need steady watching, or they feather away. The small things are worry and sleep, and the habit of sighing when a window blurs mid-sentence. I earn my living by coordinating night crews for a district of clinics and riverlocks. We balance the schedule like a budget, and we trade slots like neighbors swapping sugar. When funds run tight, we hold remote vigils in which citizens share their gaze from kitchens and buses. Some people knit while they watch, and the pattern on the sweater takes on the crispness of the road they saved. The best knitters call this road wool, and they say the stitches breathe better after a long night. I am not a knitter, but I listen while I manage the crew channel, and the talk floats me through the shift. Not all of our work is noble, and not all of our work is fair. There are black markets for eyeball time, and there are scams that sell fake glances to cover a sawmill that should be shut. There are neighborhoods that become render deserts when budgets fall, and they often match the old maps of neglect. We fight to keep that from happening, and we do not always win, and that is why I keep writing to you. I want you to know we build better when we remember that the world is what we hold. This idea touches love in a way that may feel tender to you, and I hope I do not press too hard. People here write soft focus vows before they move in together, and the vows limit how closely the pair will watch each other at home. We believe that love needs attention and love also needs rest, and rest is the gift of kind eyes turned aside. A friend of mine and her partner keep a cove on the coast where they do not place any devices on the sand. They go there to recover their sense of surprise, and they allow the shore to decide its own face until they arrive. The cove meets them like a shy host, and together they settle on a rock and a tide line for the afternoon. They keep the cove small on purpose, because crowds harden it and turn it dull and loud. Crowds can be lovely at a concert, but crowds can ruin a whisper, and a cove is a whisper. We raise children to respect the ethics of looking, and we teach this with chores and with light. Each child gets a small lens for their bedroom that hums when a corner goes thin. The lens shows a gentle glow if the child is reading, and it sleeps when the child sleeps. We tell them that a good neighbor keeps a kettle and a curb and a clinic in view long enough for someone else to rest. This means bedtime stories do two jobs, because the story keeps the kitchen steady while the kettle cools. Nightlights are not for monsters in our houses, and nightlights are for refrigerators and stairs. When my little niece visits, she insists on pointing the beam at the coat rack until hats look like hats again. She calls this hat rescue, and I do not correct her because it is sweet and it is true enough. The science teams in my city study the edge of our mapped sea, and they call that edge the verge. They send drones to seed a line of little looks that let a boat follow without panic. Drones are careful but not soulful, and they are fast but not wise. Some of our best discoveries have come from ravens and otters, because animals are patient and hold paths with their daily routes. We now protect wildlife corridors for reasons both old and new, and we call this policy the living braid. The living braid keeps forests from slipping when storms empty our view. A year ago, a research team walked beyond the last braid and came home with a map that did not match itself. I read their notes, and the notes felt like a kind of fever, and I put the folder away and made tea. The team argued over how many steps it took to reach the ridge, and each count was right inside its own story. We have not sent another team since, because nothing is worth a life lost to a polite argument with a cliff. You will ask about death, and I can answer only with the care of someone who has kept vigil. We do not believe that death is a collapse, and we believe that a life well tended can let go without fear of thin halls. In our hospice rooms, the last hours are quiet and steady, and we hold the walls so that the person can loosen their hold in peace. When we leave the room after the last breath, some families stay to watch while the bed softens and the air clears. They say the room looks like it sighed, and then the corridor looks like it finished a sentence. I have stood there with strangers and felt like a good book had found its last page at the right time. We keep rights for both watching and not watching, and a people needs both if it hopes to live with some grace. The hardest problem in public life is who decides what to hold and for how long. Some argue for a central grid that locks key structures in place all day and all night. Others argue for a commons that lets neighborhoods choose what matters week by week. The grid is efficient and often cold, and the commons is human and often messy. We have elections that feel like your budgets and your hearts got into a loud debate at the same table. A slogan that worked last year said, "Make small towns seen again," and I know you can hear the echo in that. A rival campaign promised home quiet zones, where the state must not watch unless there is a warrant. I voted for a mixed plan that funds bridges and clinics but caps observation inside the home. I thought this plan respected both bread and breath, and I wanted both for us. Crime adapts to the gaps in any plan, and here crime watches the pauses between watches. Smugglers run blink routes that time their moves to the rhythm of shift changes and prayer bells. Investigators counter with observer braids that bind threads from witnesses and sensors and patrol notes. The braid does not solve a case by itself, and the braid keeps a jury from fighting over thin air. A friend in the department says the best tip is still a neighbor with a kettle and a good memory. Private life in our city carries joy that is easy to miss when we talk about rules for eyes. I had a dinner last week where a table of friends agreed to cook with minimal watching. We set our devices to a low hum and let the kitchen choose a layout while we told stories. The sauce took on a taste I cannot name, which is my favorite taste, and we wrote down the steps with a smile. That recipe only works when you do not stare at it, and we named it Hush Stew, and we eat it once a month. We share music that way too, and there are clubs where a song cannot be recorded and will not exist after the show. The band calls the crowd a circle of hands that catch a falling tune. When the doors open and we leave, the notes are gone and the smiles remain. Art has adapted to our habits, and painters design rooms that must be viewed in a certain path. If you start in the wrong corner, the room loses its balance and the colors argue. A child once ran through the gallery out of order, and the room went pale, and then restored itself when the guide walked the proper line. We learn to walk rooms the way you learn to speak, with respect for pauses. My aunt is a teacher who runs a class called How to See Without Stealing. She teaches kids to glance and grant, which means you look, then you let, and you trust the world to stand without your grip. She says that grants are as important as glances, and her students nod like they know what that means. I visit her class to talk about night watch work, and I ask the kids what they keep in view when parents sleep. They mention stairs and stoves and older brothers who snore, and we all laugh and clap for the brothers. Humor keeps us gentle when rules get heavy, and we need that kindness like we need bread. I have said the word bread more than once, because I am thinking about a bakery where a scene took place last winter. A storm knocked out a ring of lamps, and the street went thin while a line of people waited for morning loaves. The ovens flickered, and the baker called a look-in on the local channel. Within minutes, 10 neighbors pointed their lenses toward the shop and kept the racks solid until sunrise. The baker sent little rolls to their doorsteps with thank you notes and butter tucked in a paper wrap. I took a picture of one note, and then I deleted it because some thanks belong to the hour that made them. We do not fear the unrendered like a child fears a closet, and we treat it like a library that closes for the night. You cannot live in a library at all hours, and you can return in the morning and pick up the page. Some travelers like the feel of the verge, where a path needs your promise for every step. They talk about that walk like you talk about learning a craft that asks for patience and breath. I am not a verge walker, but I understand the appeal of a trail that trusts you back. When I dream about streets that do not ask to be held, and I wake up happy to hold them anyway. I promised you story and not just rules, so let me tell you about my brother and the night the bridge almost faltered. He works the late shift at a powerhouse on the river, and he bikes home across Bridge 12 after midnight. The council cut funds for overnight coverage during a short winter to fill a gap in the school meal plan. I supported the meal plan and hated the cut, and we tried to cover the bridge with volunteers and tea. On the third week, my crew got sick with a seasonal cough, and I ran out of eyes for the span. My brother sent a message that he was on his way home, and I saw the schedule and felt the floor dip under me. I pinged the district chat and begged for a look-in, and so many neighbors replied that I cried at my desk. They watched while my brother crossed, and he said later that the wind felt like hands. The next day, the council revised the budget and the school kept its meals and the bridge got a lamp line. We call that a clean win, and when I write about it now, I feel my chest go warm. I keep warm stories near, because the cold ones are easy to find on their own. A cold story is about a warehouse that paid for fake glances while cheap bolts held up a heavy roof. The roof grew vague at the seams, and the bolts took on a powder shine that means trouble. The first snow fell and the roof gave a slow sigh, and then a soft fold, and a night crew caught it before anyone died. We shut the place down and held a hearing, and a woman from the warehouse cried and said her boss told her to buy the counterfeit braid. We fined the owners and sent them to court, and we funded a worker hotline, and I hope it helps next time. Our lives are a chain of next times, and the chain is why you and I still write. I try to send you lives and not lessons, but I know lessons creep in when I reach for clarity. I will share a quiet thing that I have not told another person outside my family. When I am alone at the window, I keep my gaze soft on purpose, and I let the lane breathe. I do this to remind myself that I am not the only holder of this block, and that the trees know their shape without my worry. The lane never falls away when I do this, and it ripples a little, and then it steadies when a bus turns the corner. The ripple is my favorite part, because it is proof that I can rest, and that the city forgives me for a minute. Forgiveness is not in any manual, and it is the only way I can get through a winter of alerts. You will ask if recordings help, and the answer is yes and no, and I know that answer is hard. A raw recording cannot hold a place by itself, and it can act as a witness that matches a live glance for a short time. We seal the match with keys that you and I would call signatures, and we log the time so that a lie cannot drape itself in yesterday. We teach kids that a recording is an echo, and a live look is a hand. A city needs both hands and echoes, and the trick is knowing which you need at noon and which you need at dawn. You wrote once that you are a fan of islands of calm in a busy week. We have islands here called Sabbath blocks, where the district agrees to loosen its gaze for a day. Shops adjust their hours, and kitchens plan ahead, and the air feels kinder on those streets. Some people dislike the practice and say it invites drift and crime, and I respect their fear and I still vote for the pause. We found that Sabbath blocks leave people less angry on the following Monday, and that is a number the council likes. I often spend a Sabbath on the ferry, where the deck holds steady, because the river holds us back. The river is our oldest partner and our first teacher, and children learn to count by watching buoys settle in the current. Old fishers tell tall stories and young fishers roll their eyes, and the buoys keep their lessons with patience. I want to speak of faith without sorting you into any group or creed. We have dawn circles where people sing to greet streets into their day, and it is less mystical than it sounds. The circles are practical as well as sweet, and the songs keep the tram stops clear while coffee brews. I love the last chord before the sun tops the tower, and I love the moment after when nothing dramatic happens. Nothing dramatic is my favorite piece, and I want more of that for both of us. There is a question I keep for hard weeks, and it is a simple one that never fails me. The question is what is worth holding today, and I answer it by naming one thing and one person. Today I am holding the footbridge behind the museum and the baker who saved the dawn. Tomorrow I might hold a clinic hallway and my niece with her hat rescue beam. When I feel greedy and try to hold too much, the world reminds me with a little spin in the kitchen. I want to tell you about a meeting I attended where a mayor proposed mandatory household beacons at night. The pitch was safety and speed for first responders, and the fear was a city that never looks away. People rose to speak with calm voices and strong reasons, and by the end the mayor agreed to withdraw the plan. We replaced it with opt-in kits and clear limits, and the vote passed with a soft cheer. We are at our best when we make room for limits that protect trust. Trust is our quiet power source, and I guard it the way I guard a clinic door at 2 in the morning. My hands are shaking as I type that sentence, and I do not want you to worry, and I want you to feel the truth of it. The truth is that my work often feels like pushing a pram across a road while trucks idle at a light. The light goes green when enough of us hold it, and then the wheels meet the curb with a little bump, and we laugh. We laugh because our city has a sense of humor when it is safe, and laughter is a good test of safety. I promise to keep this simple, so I will end with things that are easy to picture. A bus driver taps the console to ping the block ahead and whistles to herself as the lane steadies. A nurse sets a cup of tea on a chart and says, "Stay with me," to a corridor, and the corridor listens. A school kid points a small beam at the stairs and says goodnight to the steps, and the steps answer by standing still. A couple walks into their cove and does not name the rocks, and the tide picks a line that suits their day. An old man on a bench tells the pigeons that his street will outlive him, and then he watches until he believes his own words. I am not trying to be poetic, and I am trying to be clear about the way care becomes shape. If you remember one thing about my city, let it be that shape is the memory of a promise kept. When you put the kettle on, or tie your shoes, or stand by a window, you can think of me holding a door somewhere near a river. I will think of you reading this and making a small space in your evening for a neighbor you have not met. The seam between our worlds is thin where letters pass, and thicker where people shout. Thank you for choosing the thin spot with me tonight. I will close soon because the night watch is changing shifts and I need to send the new schedule. I have included a little map of our district in my drawer, and I will show it to you in a future letter if that feels right. For now, I will ask a gentle favor that costs nothing and means everything here. Please decide one small thing you will hold tomorrow, and then tell someone why you chose it. That is all a city is, and it is many people telling each other how they will care and then doing it. When enough of us do this, the bridges stay, the clinics breathe, and the cove keeps its shy smile. I think your world knows this already, and my world needed to learn it in a louder way. We are both lucky to be reminded when we forget. I will sit for a minute and listen for the lamp on my desk to hum. The hum means the grid is matching my typing, and the room is grateful. Gratitude is a good note to end a letter on, and it is also a good note to begin tomorrow with. I am sending you a steady breath and a clean street and a warm stare. I am sending you the memory of a bridge that held because neighbors cared to look. I am sending you a promise that I will write again when the hour is kind. From your friend who lives next to your world. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of my letter. Please tap like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with your thoughts. If you wish to support the channel, you can use the QR code at the lower right or the link in the video description. In the description, you will also find links to other works from a very different series. Take care tonight, and please join me again for the next message.